Python join without the confusion. Join looks backwards at first, but once you realize the separator is doing the work, it clicks. Here you can see I'm joining a date, but the join feels backwards. You're putting in the separator first and then the parts. Most people expect it to be like this. You have words that you want to join, or the letters A, B, C, and you expect that you will join the words with the separator here. So essentially, you are saying join these words using dash. So logically it feels like list should be doing the joining. But Python thinks differently. It says use the string as a separator to join these items. So the separator string calls this separator a owner's button. As viewer, we've made a difference here. We should enter the description, and this is the method. You can see this is a string and this is the method. It literally means use the dash between each item. And this is the output we get. This is what Python is doing. It is adding a plus dash plus b plus dash plus c. You need to think that the dash is doing the joining. The list is just being joined. So the list here is being joined, but the dash is actually doing the joining. You can imagine it like this. Imagine A, B, C are the beads. So this bead needs to be joined on a string. So the dash is the string that connects A, B, C. The string is the one that is connecting, not the beads. Imagine like this. You have 8 and then your string, and the second bead, and then string, and then C. So the beads are on a string. So the string is the one that connects them and joins them. Hence string here is doing the joining. And this is how I would remember this as. So we ask the string, please connect these pieces using yourself. We want to put these pieces on a string. So the list are the loose pieces. The separator is, or the connector is, the string. And join is the action of connecting the parts to the string. So the connector or the separator performs the joining like this. In this example, you can see space is the separator or the connector. It inserts itself between each word. So you end up with hello space word. So the space is the connector or the joiner. In this instance, space is the string that you are attaching the words onto. Loop is less efficient than a join in Python. Doing this is a bad practice. Using the join operator is very efficient. Let me explain why. As you know, strings in Python are immutable. That means they cannot mutate, and in simple English, that means that strings cannot change in Python. You cannot mutate them. You cannot change them. So what happens is, when you have a variable here, and you are going to loop through this list of strings, and then you are going to concatenate this list from here into this result. Every time you do this line of concatenation, Python will create a temporary string in memory and throw away the previous string, the loop, as it speeds up. And imagine rather than 3 letters here, you have thousands of strings or millions. Every time you do concatenation, it will create those temporary strings, and as you join more and more, the string becomes longer and longer, which means it uses up more memory than necessary. And it is just throwing away that memory in your computer. The join method, what it does is it pre-allocates the memory in your computer, so it counts the length needed for your entire string, and then allocates that memory on your computer. It then adds individually all the strings to that pre-allocated memory. So rather than throwing away the memory every time, it will actually use the same memory to append these items. So you can imagine pre-allocating a list, and then appending each word onto that list. So rather than throwing away the previous item, just as strings do, because strings cannot change, so every time it does a concatenation, it will throw away the previous instance of that result string and allocate a new one. While join, what it does is it pre-allocates the memory to say, you have 1, 2, 3 items and you want to add those items, so I will pre-allocate the memory, so it mutates the existing string as such, if you think of it like that. But this is happening at lower level, using the CPython library and the C language, but the general rule in Python is strings cannot change. You always have to. If you add something to a string, it will always create a new string in memory and never change the existing one. The existing one will be garbage collected. An easier way to think of it is with the plus equal operator, is like writing a sentence on paper, then rewriting the whole sentence every time you add a new word. So it will go A, you write A, then you have B to add. So you write A again, and then B next to it. And then you want to add on C, so you have to rewrite A, B, and then C next to it, and you keep on doing it. But you can see, you have to rewrite this every time. With join, it's like counting how many words you have, and then writing them once. So you write, I've got 3 words, so I will write A, B, C, and that's the end of the story. So always use join rather than a loop to join strings, because of memory efficiency and processing efficiency. This is all due to the fact that strings in Python are immutable, they cannot change. So they have come up with this more efficient join will fail on numbers. Do you know the reason why this fails? Here you can see that we want to comma separate these numbers into a single string. The join method, if you look at the definition of it, only accepts literal strings and it returns back literal strings in this fashion. By passing in numbers here, you get the error to say it expected string and int, because you have not added quotation marks around your numbers. But you do not want to manually do that. That will be very painstaking. Instead, what you want to do is convert the numbers into a string using code. There are 2 ways to do this. One which is you use str function, and for each string you have to pass a number into the string function. If you do that, you get a number in numbers, so you're writing a loop here for in loop. So for a number in numbers, which is that variable here, you are converting. Or applying the str function. If you are unsure what the str function is, be sure to watch earlier lessons. Each number will be converted into a string by adding square brackets around it. It's going to convert it back into a list, so it's doing 2 things at once. One, which is converting it into a string and then adding them back into a list. So you essentially end up with a list again. And then you are joining on the string version of these numbers. If you run this, you can see that it succeeds. Whereas if you do it without converting them into string, it will fail. So here you can see there are the alternative way of doing it using the map function. So rather than writing a loop, you can just write the map method. And the map method has 2 parameters, a function to apply and the items to apply to. And it basically is doing what the loop does, all for converting it back into a list. But the map function is a bit more efficient in certain situations. Running this gives us the same output. And just to show you what it looks like over here. So if I run this code here and print, and I have just printed the numbers, and you can see they now have quotation marks around them. So this bit over here basically is adding in quotation marks around your numbers too. Make it work with the join operator or the join method. Concatenation and def strings in Python. Why does this code fail? Do you know? Let's take a look at simple concatenation in Python. Here we have 2 variables. We want to join them together and print the result. We need to add a space character in between them, so you can use the plus operator. That's the first name. That's the last name. Running this, you can see we get the name James Smith. Now, this is the interesting one. We have age and we want to print the word age, a colon and a space character over here. And we want to print the age variable here, which contains the number 25. Running this, you can see we get the error. Can only concatenate string, not int. Since this is a string, the first part, and you want to add in a number, Python doesn't like that. So what you need to do instead is do the same thing as before, but around your variable age, add in the string class. String class has a default constructor and it accepts multiple data types. And one of them that it accepts is integer. By putting integer into this method, it will convert it to a string. And then when we try and run this, you can see we get the expected results. So don't do it without converting it to a string data type first. There's a better way of doing this, which I will show you shortly. But before I do that, you can see a problem with this long version of string concatenation. This looks very messy. You have a lot of pluses that you have to use. You have to add in spaces here and put the quotation marks and then put the variable name in. Then put another plus. You have to use this function to convert the integer into a string. And finally, you get the output as shown here. But with fstring, all that becomes simplified. And with fstring, one of the first things I want you to notice is you no longer have to add in the str conversion method around the age. Fstring automatically does it. All you have to do is add an f at the beginning, so open quotation mark. Before you do that, you need to add an f, the letter f, and then you put your string. But whenever you want a variable to be displayed, just add it in these curly braces. By adding them in curly braces, Python will detect that as a variable name, while anything that's not in curly braces, it will detect as normal common string. And you can then use things like expressions within the curly braces. So you can do addition or anything that can be coded. Here you can also call a function. So running this, you can see the sum of x plus y is 8. It's shown. So it has done the mathematical calculation within these curly braces. And then you can see you can also call method names. And you will get the output here, a string over here. And then the actual name is converted by calling the method. And this is all done with the power of fstrings in Python. So I would avoid using the plus operator and instead use fstrings where possible. Decimal formatting with fstrings. Do you know what the syntax actually means? If not, then watch this video. So here we have a number stored in this variable called price. The number is 12.5. If we just want to print that number using fstrings, we just add the curly braces over here and then it will print that number as it appears. But if you want to display 2 decimal places, then you have to use this weird looking syntax. But it's very simple. You still have your variable name there, but then put a colon. The colon signifies that you want to now format this variable with something. And here what we want to format it with is the decimal. So you add a dot, then you add how many decimal places you want the dot. So after the dot over here in your number, how many decimal places you want to add. You can see here when we add so after the decimal place point, you want 2 numbers. So we added 2 here and the f represents it's a floating point. Now, in the next one, you can see that you can actually add a number before the floating point, as if it signifies that you want that to be the placeholder before the decimal place. The 8 signifies that you want a total of 8 characters. So that includes the 2 characters here, the 1 character for the decimal. So this is important. Decimal is counted, and then any that remain, you want that to be filled up by 8. So in essence what this is saying is you want a total of 10 characters for something. So in that instance you will type 10 and what will happen is you will get the entire number that is 10 characters long. This will be useful in situations where you need the exact length for a string that you want to match to. So by padding it with zeros you got 10 characters and you can do that. That if you only wanted for example 2, then you can see it doesn't pad it with anything. It just keeps the number as it was originally. So padding as anything less actually doesn't do anything. But as soon as you go you want 5 or 6, then you can see that it starts to add in 3 here, and this is the 4th character, and the 5th and 6th over here. So just remember a colon after the variable name signifies you want to begin formatting your variable. The dot signifies is a decimal. After the dot shape for the end question is written in the real title, so after the before the dot, you want 2 digits like this. If you wanted 3, you could change that to 3. And you can see how this works. It's added 3 digits after the decimal. Here, before the dot, you added that you want a total of 6 characters. So 6 characters here, and you want to fill the remainder with zeros. So this is digit formatting with fstring syntax. Shorthand padding with zeros with fstring in Python. Do you know the difference between the syntax and the syntax? If you don't, then you definitely need to watch this. Let's run the code to show you what's happening. You can see I have this variable price. This is the value that it contains. It contains a decimal, or some people may call it floating point number. The decimal or the floating point number is 12.5. In the original value it only has 1 number after the decimal, but you can include with fstring formatting after your variable name in the colon, and the dot indicates it's a floating point number. The 3f means you want 3 places after the decimal point, which we do here. The next part is you want the entire width of the printout. So the entire length of this variable value to be of 6 characters. This includes the decimal place. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The 0 is a special formatting specifier that you just need to remember. It has a special use case. The official or the fuller method of doing it is by including this right-angled bracket. What that does is it pads out your number by 6 characters by the character that's on the left-hand side. But this is not needed if you want to pad your number out by zeros only. So if you want zeros, you can essentially skip adding in the right angle arrow over here. You can see they both do the same thing. They give you your number that is of length 6. Anything less than that, it pads it with zeros. So including the decimal point, that's 5 digits. So to make up for 6, it adds a 0. But what you can do is, if you want to pad it with 9s, then essentially adding a 9 here works. But you cannot do this. You cannot do 96 here because then you will get empty spaces. So you have to add the right arrow over here for this to work. Now then I can increase this number to, let's say, 12. And you can see the effects of this. So this is now 12 characters long, including the place over here. And in this fashion you can do something crazy, pad it with 30. And then you can see this is now 30 characters long. But going back to the main point, if you just wanted this, then you can just add it over here. And you can see your number is padded up to 30 characters, but with zeros. You cannot do this with any other number as they do not work. So here you can see it's added 930 padding spaces over here, which is not what your intention was. So just remember that is optional if you want padding with zeros. And here you can see you can pad it with anything that you want. You can use the hash symbol. You can use the @ symbol if you wish so. You can use any letters. So here I'm just going to use the letter L, and you can see it's padded it with LLL over here to make up 30 characters in total. Do you know how to work with integer formatting with f-strings in Python? So here I have an integer installed in this variable. When I print out the integer, you can see the output here, 42. But if you want to customize your printout using f-strings, remember f-strings are just these curly brackets around your variable name in a string. So you have a string concatenation, but the curly braces allow you to customize how your integers are displayed or how your variables are displayed. So remember to add f at the beginning, then open quotation mark, start your string, and where you want to insert a variable, you can then do a variable name and a colon. A colon is important. After the colon is where you define all your formatting. So here you can see 5. What does that actually mean? D part signifies it's an integer that we are dealing with. So this is not a floating point number, which is normally f. F means it's a decimal. So D means it's a digit. So it's an integer. So here, what we want to do is, by adding a 5 before D, you want to pad the length of this to be 5. You can see if you don't add something before the 5, it will sort of affect the entities that you're kind of using. So let's, it just adds lots of spaces. But if you added her at the before 5, then it will pad your number 42 by the zeros. It's doing 3 zeros because we asked for string length to be 5. So it's doing 3 zeros plus the 2 digits we already had. And that makes the total 5. Now, you might be thinking, well, I want to pad it by the number 8. This won't work. You will get a weird output, which is added 85 spaces, or made the length to be 85 altogether, including the 2 digits that we already had. So if you want to add anything other than equal, so that would work. And here, if I want 20 zeros, 18 rows, then 2 existing ones plus 18 zeros, that would make the total 20. But if you want something other than 0, for example, you want the number 9 to appear, then what you can do is delete the 0, add a 9, and then do a right arrow over here by doing this, and it lets you add the 9s. Now, you can do zeros in that fashion too. What was significant was for adding 0, which is a special case. They've made a shorthand, so a quicker way to basically not add this right arrow there. So you can just basically leave that out, and that would give you the same amount. But if you want anything other than the then you've got to have this right arrow within your formatting string here. So this specification says you must include that. But if you just want zeros, you can just exclude it, and then you can use other things, such as if you want to populate it with the letter R, for example, then you can get R repeated up to 18 times and then plus 2 from the variable that we already had. That makes the total 20. So the 20 is the length, and it's added R as a padding. And if you don't include anything, so if you just do this, then of course, you just get a blank space character. So just remember to use D4 digit for integer formatting in your F strings. Hidden power of string formatting in Python. Do you know how to do this in Python? If you don't, then watch this video. Here I have a string stored in a variable. Sam is stored in this variable called name. Using f-strings, remember f-strings are just curly braces that can be incorporated in a string. So a string is anything that begins with double speech mark or single speech mark. At the beginning, you just add f to get f string, which is a dynamic string that incorporates variable names. So within the curly braces over here, you can see I've included my variable name. So if I run my code, you can see that it prints that variable name, which has the name Sam. Now, if I want to pad that name and make it 10 characters long, I can do that by still having my variable name as we did here, but adding a colon. The colon and everything after it signifies that you want some sort of formatting. So here, the right angle arrow means that you want to shift the name Sam towards the right. But on the left-hand side, you want to pad it with spaces. So if you don't include a character before the right arrow here, right pointing arrow, then it will fill everything prior to the name Sam with spaces. But I can add a character such as the plus character. And you can see it's now filling in the left hand side with plus symbols or the plus sign. And you can do that if you want it the other way around. You want Sam to appear on the left and you want the pluses to appear on the right. Then you just change the arrow pointing towards the left. And that gives you pluses on this side. Remember, if you don't include a plus, then it will just do empty spaces like, so you have empty spaces here. But if you want to include the pluses on the left and the right, then you can add the arrow pointing upwards. So here you can do that and you can see that we get plus on both sides and Sam is in the center. The 10 signifies that you want the total length to be 10. That includes the name Sam. So if I had Samuel, for example, you can see the number of pluses will reduce. And now you only get 2 pluses here and 2 on this side. So 4 and you get 4 here in spaces if you don't include anything before the angled arrows over here. So this is the power or the hidden power of string formatting in an F string that nobody tells you how to use. It's very simple, just add a colon and then you can format your string as you please. Percentage formatting with F string in Python. Do you know how to format a number as a percentage in Python? I bet you don't. Let's do it with F strings. Here you can see I have a variable. This variable is a decimal that I want to display as a percentage. So I am going to use F string. F string is basically an F at the beginning of your string, and then within your string you can incorporate variable names. So by adding in these 2 curly braces, you can add in your variable names or any other expression that you want to add. In this case, we'll keep it simple and add the variable name. By doing this, you will see that we get our text row and then a printout of our variable. But if you want it like this as a percentage, then you need to understand the syntax. So you have your variable name, then you have a colon. After the colon, you can specify your format. So the colon splits the variable name and the formatting rule that you want to apply. To get a percentage, what you need to do is we have the percentage sign, and that's what makes this rule work. So here, by having it 2, you can see that it's going to add 2 decimal places. If you add 3, then that will add 3 decimal places. Now one significant part is you got the decimal point here and then the number 3. So this is after the decimal point, add in 3 numbers. If you don't want any numbers after the decimal, you can say that you just want 0. And that would give you 86%. Notice that it rounds it up as well. So it includes the rounding of the numbers. But if you want to have some padding added to your percentage, then what you can do is you can add a number before the decimal. And what it will do is it will add the spaces to make the length of the entire string of your variable to be 5 characters long. If you want anything other than spaces, such as the number 0, you can add that, and then you can see that it's padded it with spaces. But if you want to pad it with anything other than those, then you need to include the number, the right arrow, and then you can pad it with, for example, the plus symbol. Here you can see it adds 2 pluses. So the total character length is 5. So 2, 3, 4, and 5 including the percentage sign. If you want more, then of course you can add 9 and then you can see our number of plus signs increase and this is kept. But if you then include that you want 2 decimal places, then of course the number of pluses will reduce and you get 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. You can also pad it on the other side if you want by Just changing the arrow pointing towards the left. So by pointing towards the right, you can see it adds it to the left-hand side. But if you want your number to be moved over to the left-hand side, so like this on the left-hand side, but the plus is to appear on the right, you just change this. So this moves your number to the left, and if you want to move to the right, then you just basically change the arrow pointing towards the right.